and you orgasm, the sparks from the keys go flying out into your auric field levels. They form clouds, different layer clouds around the body and through the body. They fuel the auric levels. When you're producing Metatronic keys, you're making clouds of Metatronic light balls that the apparatus in the planetary core and in the planetary grids that's connected to the beast machine directly sucks in and feeds on. So we have been being used to harvest artificial light in order to fuel the beast machine that was designed to take over this planet as part of a larger takeover agenda that started way up in density 4 a very, very long time ago. Anyway, we're going to fix that, at least in the indigo shield. And let's see, I'll go to the next one before we go. Let's see. Yeah, is it there? Yeah, put that one up, honey. Thank you. What time is what were they having their coffee break? 25 minutes, okay. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to take a 5 before I do tachyons, though, because I'm starting to get whacked with some kind of currents coming in. Yeah. Oh. I could just do a 5 in about 2 minutes because I just got hit really hard in the back with something. Yeah, excuse me a minute. Anyway, the distortions we were talking about in the template that sits on top of the natural Shadi template and is a reflection of the template distortion that is in the outer seed atom is this configuration. It blocks and twists the natural shields, and it twists them differently. It affects males and females differently. We'll talk about that more tomorrow while I read the small print. But it creates a buildup of charge in the male system that creates a buildup of hormones as far as testosterone, I believe, where it actually increases the sex drive. And it does other things with the females. Some females actually carry a male template, so you don't always have just female body and a female consciousness in the body. Sometimes there are versions of that. What? Excuse me. Yes, let me point out that this distortion creates a buildup of the Metatronic keys in the core areas of the Shadi, which should be phasing, but it's not, and it creates the same buildup in the seed atom up here, in the outer seed atom. These buildups in the 2 seed atoms, this one eventually can lead to prostate cancer and those kind of things, buildup of the Metatronic crystal keys in there. And this is why you'll often see or hear scientifically that, or medically, that people, particularly if they don't, males, if they don't ejaculate a lot, which at least is getting those keys out of there and throwing them out into the field, right? If they don't have sex a lot, those keys build up and build up and build up in the system just from the natural rushes of frequency that occur through the distortions in the Rushite spiral interfacing with the Metatronic template. And eventually it just overrides the natural light body structure that forms those parts of the body, and it forms that. The same thing can happen in females, but it goes into the cervical aspect. All right, so some of the diseases that are very common in our times are because of what's taking place with the keys and an oversaturation of Metatronic keys. Cancers are basically caused by that, where Metatronic programming has overrode any natural programming that might have remained, and it just starts to eat the natural light cell structure, which is the matter structure or the cellular structure. Next one, please. Something's activating. Now, on a happier note, as we work with the technologies to heal or activate the Shadi so its natural currents can come through to heal the distortions that are taking place down there and also up here and also in our Rushite current and in our chakras and our axiotonal lines, eventually we will be able to activate this. Now, this is not only the Chariot-ifier, which would be around that, right? The crystal body structure, but this is called the Christ Star crystal capsule of the Rachel body. This is what happens when you begin to activate the middle Edon currents and then the inner currents as well. So you have the crystal body, the chariot of fire, that is the ascension vehicle for the outer domains. You have that combined with the Christ star crystal capsule body that forms, that allows you to not only move up and down anywhere through the outer domain creation, which you don't really want to do right now until we get out of this Vecca that's falling, right? It allows you to move also inward into creation. So if we're in an outer layer sphere, and this is where our reality fields are taking place, there's another domain just inside of that called the Eden. And this was called the Jardin of Eden, or the Garden of Eden. This is where the Eden stories came from, and this is where we originally came out of. This is where all of our races originally came out into manifestation from. And some of us still carry the codes, what are called the Aurora races, still carry the crystals in their bodies and their gene codes that will allow them to move through not only to the middle Edens, but to what's called the inner Adons, or the hubs. These are the races that are helping us now to get the last ascension path opened here and keep it opened for the Indigo Shield. So what we are building as we are working with these currents and these healings is the ability to activate the Christ Star Crystal Capsule. So we will be able to enter the states of matter and consciousness that allow us to kind of pop off here, ride the crystal spiral, and remanifest, ideally with your body intact. Worst case scenario, it takes too long and your body just doesn't have enough life force to keep itself going. Because everybody right now has like let's say, a natural death window where the body will run out of energy, and depends on how much you can bring back into it, you can push that further and further ahead in time and extend life. Well, what we're trying to do is get us all to the point, get the Indigo Shield to the point where possibly even as a collective, flying people, where we could, at Starfire Point, activate this and use it to move through. But first we would have to go out to the Eartha gates that are around us, right? And from Eartha, we can ride through this into the Eden levels and go back to the garden. That's why we were saying, there's no place like home. Going back to the garden, of Eden. And it is Eden, E-D-O-N, just like the Adon is A-D-O-N. And the stories of the Garden of Eden were taken from the Mahabharata text that talked about some of these processes. The teachings we're being given now that allow us access to understanding the anatomy and the currents and the techniques involved with being able to go not only ascension upward in the outer domains, but actually to be able to ride a starfire through into the middle domain, these have not been put in writing down here before. They weren't needed down here before. They are only given as a last chance for if you have a system that is falling black hole and there are a few teams of Christic beings still left there that can still get out. Every effort will be made by the Christic races all over the place in the cosmos to assist those races, and that's why we're being given the data we're being given, because it's a last case scenario. Just so you know, Starfire, when, has been an iffy thing. There was a certain point in time when it could have been as soon as 2014, which is not far away. And we were actually hoping for that. Get it over with, and whoever can get out, bring people together and get as many people out as we can. That went with the probability that was called the Rainbow Bridge. All right, that was a certain set of things, of interventions that the Guardian races have been doing. And the Rainbow Bridge was supposed to allow a whole bunch of people on this planet to be able to make it out through. If they couldn't reach full crystal spiral activation, they could reach what was called the rainbow spiral. And it would give them quite a bit more time to try to reach crystal before the starfire, before they had to worry about full starfire. And that was going to hold until what was called the Tothian Shield fell. The Tothian Shield refers to the Tothian the Tothian Anunnaki. Okay, the Tothian Anunnaki have huge head count on this planet right now. And their shield fell because they were attacked by a group called the Thetans. The Thetans are known as the Fallen Lyrans, but they ended up hanging out in the Theta system, it's SG-1, and they're some of the nastiest you run into as far as fallen ones. They have taken sides in a much larger drama with a group called the Wisadrak Red Dragons. And the Thetans, Red Dragons, are standing against the other side, which has to do with the Green Dragon groups, which we'll talk about more at FOL. But the Tothian shield was on Rainbow Bridge. It was a big amount of the people, like the head count of the Tothians who wanted host onto Rainbow Bridge. Their shield was going to be pulled up and out, and those who could have ascended would have had that opportunity. Because they were attacked by the Thetans, their shield has actually shattered, and the pieces of it are now being directly controlled through Threshold and being directed by the Thetans. That's why a lot of us are actually under attack by people that used to be our friends sometimes, that are carrying the influence. If they're not incarnate Tothians, they might just have an overshadow of Tothian in their field. But all of a sudden, the Tothians aren't our friends anymore, because the Thetans have basically said, well, we'll just shatter your shield completely and destroy you, or go do our dirty work. Go get the Azarites, right? They're after the Indigo Shield, because the Indigo Shield is the only thing that can hold open the crystal spiral for what is called the rainbow thread probability. There is still a thread of the crystal spiral that can reach through, so anything that's still Christic can still get through Starfire by going through the Eartha gates, the Aurora gates, and then into Starfire from Eartha. They don't like this because there are a bunch of Jehovian groups and some others that if they can't go all the way on crystal, they can do what is called crossback, which is they can fall into their own fallen matrix that's already fallen, but they won't fall under Wisadrak control. So the Azarite shield is holding open what is called crossback by holding open the rainbow thread, and that really upsets the Red Dragons. And we'll talk more about what that means in relation to the VV game, Victim-Victimizer game, because what we learn tomorrow about the Victim-Victimizer game is not just about how it applies to sexuality and your personal lives, but we're going to see something about race, about dramas that take place through the yugas, which are the cycles of evolution on a planetary level. And what we are looking at now is we're reaching a very specific point in the Victim-Victimizer game drama, in that program, in relation to what is happening on the planet between the different race groups here, between the different soul groups here. And we are preparing for what is going to be a war between the Red Dragon groups and the Green Dragon groups. The Azarites aren't part of the war, but they are holding Crossback open. And that means they are basically being considered by the Red Dragon groups as siding with the Greens, which we're not. We're siding with the Ascension Spiral, thank you. Like, fine, you guys fight it out. That's what you want to do. We're out of here. We don't want to do this. However, this whole thing of losing the Tothian shield, so much quantum was lost from the key generation cycles that the Indigos and the Angelic Humans were working with, that the Tothians were helping to support that. At this point, we have a trickle left, we have the rainbow thread left, and that means it's going to take longer to get to Starfire. If we Starfired in 2014, like was originally on schedule for Rainbow Bridge, they said only out of 144 rungs, or let's say circles, of the Indigo Shield, only the first inner 3 would make it out. All the rest would fall Wisadrak. And that's not good. So they're not going to try to pull the shield early. What they're going to do is have us ride out the cycle, the Starfire. 2047 to 2051 is the ETA, estimated time of arrival. That's like 40 more years of this. It was something I wasn't too thrilled about, personally, particularly since they explained that on the larger levels, the threshold activations of the Beast Machine are pushing through the VV program. And we are watching the teams assemble now. We are watching the Red Dragon groups and the Green Dragon groups. We are watching what is going to have the mask of a war between religions and ideologies. But it is much more than that. The people associated with either side of those, or it's not just two sides, there's actually clusters of sides. But the people associated with those are just being used as pawns. And they're all just trying to honor what they think is their God and the right way of being. And this is a bigger game. You're watching an ET war take place by overshadowing millions of people. And we are preparing to just be able to ride out the storm, since we have to be here, since the Indigo Shield is staying for at least till 2047. Riding out the storm means not taking sides, not getting involved as much as possible, but helping to ease suffering wherever we see it. All right. That means kind of like neutrality, where we're not getting involved in combat. We'll never have a political agenda and say, go fight this or go fight that. If push came to shove, we end up on the Green Dragon side, which will wear the front of the Christian and Jewish philosophies. All right. And it's heartbreaking what is being done here. This is not something that we've been trying to avoid this. The gardening groups have been trying to avoid this for a long time. But the threshold is now pushing it through. If you watch the propaganda that we get fed on television, and it's like at this point, it's too late. Because you know what's funny? The Reds are actually the aggressors in this one. The Greens started it a long time ago. But the victim-victimizer program flips every so often in a cycle. And what used to be the victimizer becomes the victim. Right now, the Reds are in the the victim position, even though they're claiming, they're mirroring, they're actually accusing others of what they're doing. And this is small groups of people who head large collectives of people. This is not a whole body of Christians or a whole body of Jewish people or a whole body of Muslim people. It's not that at all. It's a small little group of avatars that are incarnate through those race lines from the ET realms of the fallen angelics that are using the philosophies and distortions of them to move their people to destroy not the people's enemy, not an enemy to the people's God, but an enemy that's inconvenient to the ET war that's going down. At some point, we could even see official disclosure with things flying in the sky, and if it gets that bad, it's going to be electric wars all over again. Yeah. But hopefully it won't go. Right now, we're hoping for not official disclosure. Because if there is official disclosure and all of a sudden they announce ETs are real and we're being visited, whoa, it's good. We definitely have to call an Azurite meeting on that one. Because if anybody on this planet knows who's been doing what for how long, when, and what the history is, we've been saying it publicly all along. So if any visitors come and decide they want to run a con job, I think we're going to be in trouble. So hopefully we won't have official disclosure to worry about in the next 40 years. I doubt that will happen. I have a feeling we will, but it's not going to be in the next 10, so let's focus on those first. Meanwhile, focus on the positive. We can do this. We can activate this natural auric configuration in our crystal body structure after we straighten out the parts, and we're really bringing it up now. We started way back there with Cathara grids and out in the huge ethers and things, fixing our currents, fixing the pieces of our anatomy. Now we're bringing it right into the body. And this is the final part. If we want to be able to take our bodies with us through a stargate into Eden, into Eartha even, to get to Eartha, we're going to need to fix the molecular structure of the body. And that's what we're moving into now with the elemental command training. Next one. Whoop. I'll talk about that tomorrow. That's something that requires training. That's something that requires some training.
We could go there for 40 years.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, we're on the expedited. The only problem is it's going to get really crowded in that one gate that's left. Because even, there's a whole bunch of consciousness here that, say their bodies died 5,000 years ago or 500 years ago or whatever, and they just hung out. There's waiting lines. Yeah. So we'll be the last to go, actually. You have to clear the astrals out and clear there's levels that have to go out first that have been waiting a lot longer than we have this time. But we are going to receive training. This is the biggest reason why 12 Tribes is being given for individuals, whether or not they choose to later participate in shield rounds to, do the Gridmaster stuff. It will assist you to begin shifting, first, the consciousness, to work with certain technologies that will allow you to shift the consciousness with us. All right, that's why they're limited in number, because between the two of us, with the two of us giving a class, this year we could, this first cycle, we can do 24 people at once and still be able to host them enough to ride through when the beloveds take us through into consciousness expansion. And that's what they're trying to train us to do that. So you guys can at least get there once, because if you can get yourself there once, you can take that encryption signature back with you, and you'll progressively open your own awareness first. First it will be a mental body and emotional body experience, and then that leads to being able to take your body through. So the 12 Tribes classes are enabling people to make their own connection. So even if something happens on this planet where we're not able to do workshops anymore, like if there's a landing, I don't think they're going to let me talk about this anymore publicly. I'll disappear probably on my own. But it will allow you to make the connection with the beloveds, with the aurora races. So it's almost like somebody walking you through the path the first time, but after that you'll be able to remember it because it's encoded in your cellular memory. And from there, you'll be able to work with aurora races. They'll probably work with you in the dream state first, but you'll learn to keep a sati state, which is, even though your body went into brainwave pattern of sleep, you are fully awake and aware, where you actually start shifting back and forth. It gets really annoying after a while, actually, because you say, oh, geez, I've got to go again, don't I? And it's like, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, got to lay down, go to get the next bunch of books or whatever. But you literally have to get used to putting your body down and going because you're busy someplace else, and then coming back into the body. But it's a real shift when you start to do that and you realize, oh my God, that is what I'm doing. Like, instead of going, oh geez, I feel really tired again. Oh geez, it's sati time again. Okay, because your body will tell you. You'll get the chemicals. It has to do with like blood sugar drop and the whole bit. I mean, it's like, and sometimes if it's really important that you get there, if you had an appointment and you forgot, they told you in the dream state, but you forgot to be there. It's like you gave them, you programmed it into your body that I need to be there at this time, and your body elementals go, okay, and they make the body shifts and the chemicals. Blood sugar drop was a great way, right, to mess with the oxygen absorption. Those 2 things alone will get you sleepy where you go to sleep. And sometimes if you don't lay down, you'll fall down, but it'll only be, they won't do it while you're driving a car, walking across the street, that kind of stuff. And that's only if it's really important. Like, say, somebody's going to drop a nuclear bomb on your head or something, they would pull you through, tell you something to get you out of there, or intervene directly. Direct intervention does happen on occasion through the Indigo Shield, by the way. I'll just use this as a little example quickly so you know what type of things can happen. We had a really weird time skip. I wouldn't call it a jump or a leap. I'd just call it a skip that happened where when the Tothian shield fell, we've been, personally in our family, has been getting harassed by those under the influence of Tothians, just harassed and intimidated in just weird ways. And in groups and people, groups of people that were very friendly before, and all of a sudden they don't know why they're being nasty. And it's even coming through some strange things. We got, there's this really weird thing happening when my older daughter, was driving myself and Zandra, the younger daughter, home. We were on the highway at night in Arizona. And all of a sudden, this really weird, you could feel this really weird, move through the car, move through the air. And then all of a sudden, these trucks were there. We didn't know where the trucks came from. They're like 18-wheelers. And it's like, okay, whatever. She's used to driving by them. She's a really good driver. And all of a sudden, they started to box us in. I said, what the hell are they doing? She's going, what are you doing? And I just got this tweak from the beloveds. Think Stephen King. And I said, Stephen King? What? So, oh wait, didn't he write some wacky thing about, or was there a movie by him or something that had to do with these menacing trucks attacking people, right? And it dawned on me they're trying to use that analogy because something was up. And it was, my daughter's driving, trying to watch the one back. If one pulls up behind me, Ma, let me know, because we were boxed in 3 ways. And they were making it where it was very, very hard to drive. And you could really feel something was going to happen. And she looked at the exit number, on the highway, exit. And all of a sudden, there was this really weird just feeling. It all cleared. They went away. And within seconds, 5 exits were gone. We were 5 exits up. That is a little bit of what sometimes, if something's trying to take a direct shot at you, they can intervene. They can't always make it, but they will if they can. So that was an example. So know that if you ever feel threatened or anything in situations that even seem 3D, ask for help from the aurora races or any one of the ones from Eartha, because the Eartha races are not, they're not fallen ones. The best way to go is through Hathor Council, which is the core council. They're actually the inner council. You can go to Crystal Lake Core Council, ask them to line you up with some aurora assistants, and leave it at that, just so nothing can interfere between Earth and aurora, through the aurora fields, anything on the Earth level. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that stuff, that kind of intervention, is available in emergencies. Now, this is just to show you. I'm going through these really quick. I'm going to take a break after that because I'm getting really wiped by a wave here. That's why if you see me, my speech is going to go. It's like there's a wave of something, and I'd like to find out what. Whether it's a threshold activation, that my body's feeling, or whether it's incoming because they're getting ready to do, an activation. They did say there would be an activation tonight, but I don't know what time it's going to be. So I just want to go through these really quick because there's only a couple of these, and then we'll take, it might even be close to break by then, right? Yeah, because there was a break scheduled for what time? Yeah, because they're having coffee and everything put out. How long till that? How long till that? Well, they don't have it out there yet, right? It is waiting. Okay. All right. I think then, because this will probably take 15. Yeah, 15. All right. I will go from here when we get back, I think. And I'll also find out why my back is killing me. It's like rigor mortis sets in when these waves come through. These are Kundalini activations, but you can get them from threshold as well as from the good stuff. And I got to find out what it is. What time? What? Okay, yeah, we'll do the official break time now.
How long?
Huh? How long is it supposed to be? Yeah. 25 minutes? Yeah? Enough time? Yeah, okay. Hello, is everybody back? Okay, we just got a few of ones you've seen before to get through before we hit tachyons. And it's the ones I want to get to that are about tachyons and how that leads to elementals that I want to get to as far as the peak of this evening's information, because there'll be more information given for tomorrow night, and I don't want to be backlogged by what you need to know by now in order to do the activation tonight. That's definitely, I think they downloaded the Shield or something, because it went into like muscle spasm for a while there. But it's easing now, which is good. They haven't said it's time for any transmission or anything yet, but there's going to be a tonal something or other probably right before we leave that will activate the what do they call them? The five states that has to do with elementals that you'll see when we get to the end of the presentation, if I don't fall asleep on my feet first. Yeah, I get tired too, just so you know. I don't mean to keep you guys up late, but it ends up meaning we're up late too, and I get pretty exhausted from this. Okay, now this is after we talked about the Kundalini and the body anatomy and all of those things. Then we'll bring it back just for a second to the planetary level of the same natural anatomy structures, where you have natural planetary Merkaba. This would be the planet. The little dark spot in the center, that would be Earth. If Earth was in its natural configuration of light body structure, it would have its primary Merkaba fields. It would have its primary shield. It would have its radial body structure, its Cathara grid. Its staff axis would run this way. Its rod axis would run this way. And you would have, of course, it's not shown on here, the planetary Richete spiral would run down that way. So it would have the same light body configuration that your light body would have. This would be the natural magnetic flows, electromagnetic flows of the planet. The magnetic fields would be shaped in this configuration for each dimensional level. All the way through this would be running through that. You'd have the D1, D2, and D3 aspects of this whole configuration, and then the density level. So that would be the natural configuration. You would also have magnetic fields would be shaped that way. So would yours. This here shows the natural lotus arc structure of the primary currents, the phasing currents. They would come out at 45 degrees in the light body sphere like this, run through the Cathara in those proportions. you would have the natural divine blueprint, which was the 12-12 configuration, or the 144. And in relation to the solar system, you would have, the sun would have the same natural configuration with the staff axis vertical. And if the staff axis of the sun is running this way vertically, the planets are supposed to have their staff axis running vertically as well, because there's natural arcs of energy that continually circulate between the central sun in a solar system and all of its planets, if they are living planets. And this would be the natural configuration of what our solar system would look like if it weren't for the distortions that are created by the Metatronic beast. The planet would also have its natural levels of the chariot of fire light body structure, which means it would be capable of ascension as far as going up into the Eka, and also, after it did that, it would be from there that it would pass into the Edan levels and those kind of things. Right now, we're doing the bypass, where we can't go up anymore because the top of the SG12 level, where our staff connects into the Eka core of our Eka-Veka system, has broken off on the universal level and tilted. So now we are not able to go fully vertical into the Eka as the normal ascension paths. We have to go directly into the middle domains. All right, so this would be the natural configuration of the solar system that we're in if it were operating in its living light mode. But because of the beast, it is not. What we have is, next one please. This mess. First of all, that divine blueprint, Rushite pattern, the 12-12, is all chopped up and tilted. It looks like that. It makes the Rushite spiral all chopped up and tilted, like that. Now actually the spiral is not just tilted, but it's split. We have our central staff axis, and this is just on the planetary level, but the universal level also holds the same configuration. It's progressively been being built for like 150 million years, no, billion years, I think, yeah, billion, fall of Metatron, 150 billion, yeah, 150 billion years ago, fall of Metatron is when the Metatronic code was brought into our system in our universal Veka. This is just the tail end of a very long story, but Earth's configuration is like this. This is not something new. This has been progressively, the beast has been being built here and activated in stages here since the first seeding 550 million years ago, since the Amente rescue mission was set in motion. But what we have now is a configuration of the tilted staff. This creates what is called the ecliptic, where when, I'll show you another diagram in relation to the sun, it makes it so the natural arcs that should come from the sun through the poles and circulate through cannot come. They hit the earth at a different angle, and it's an unnatural angle. It was a contrived angle that was meant specifically to be able to feed the beast and its tube torus configurations. So notice the tilted Cathara grid. Notice in here you have Earth. Its radial body structures, the body is actually tilted with it in its own radial body structure. Part of the radial body structure is tilted one way, parts tilted the other. It creates, this is why we have the 23.5 degree tilt on the axis, the planetary axis, and then we have another 11.5, I think it is, that goes over the other way that creates the wobble and the wobble within the wobble. It gives us the unnatural configuration of the precession of the equinoxes that is not natural. That is part of the sextant shield. Even though you can look up and say, oh, it's a part of nature. Yes, it's a part of mutated nature. So this is the configuration of the planetary, some parts of the planetary body that would also, the parts of our own bodies that are on this planet, our light body structures would mimic the same thing. The planet, because it has a much stronger and larger light body, would pull the individual light bodies into this configuration. This is the mutation we're trying to overcome, because what this does is mess up all the Rushite currents, all of the chakras. It messes up the entire code. It puts this mess of chopped up what should be the divine blueprint that runs the Rushite spiral and thus the chakras and all of that. The whole thing is connected. We are overcoming this mutation as a shield that is on the planet. At this point, the planet is not able to pull itself out of this configuration of the beast. This is also known as the 666 code, which we might talk about a bit more tomorrow or maybe during the FOL workshop, because there's very specific things that we haven't even talked about yet in relation to tachyon cycles, what the natural cycles are, and what the 666 666 cycles are, which are plugged into the victim-victimizer programs that are coming into fulfillment. What we have happening during this weekend is we, on the crystal spiral and in the indigo shield, are entering our birth of the 144 Divine Blueprint ADON in our set of tachyon cycles that we began in February in Tenerife. It is at the 6-axis point that the 666 second clock aligns directly with our spiral, which means the threshold spiral interfaces with our spiral, crystal spiral, and it attempts to harness it so that when we hit axis 7 right before it, it will actually snap the connection to the crystal spiral and draw everything, including the indigo shield, into the threshold harness. This whole configuration of MESS was designed to create an electromagnetic harness on the planet, but also the sun has part of its light body structure is in this shape, and so is our galaxy. We have a black hole at the center of the galaxy, and that has its connections to two other black holes. One's called the Wisa-Dec matrix, which is affiliated with the Green Dragon agenda, and the Wisa-Drac matrix, which is affiliated with the Red Dragon agenda. Threshold the beast has been an interdimensional apparatus of anti-Christic science, black hole science, that was created by one of the fallen angelic groups and then fought over by various ones. The green groups and the red groups have been fighting over this, who's going to control it at its final activation of the beast. And the Greens had control of it for a while, and they started its activation on the planet in this time period. And then they lost control of it, and the threshold part of the beast apparatus is run by the Reds, where the Wisa-Dracs. All right, so we're facing now that planetary light body is being pulled into compaction, into a harness that will allow it to fall without losing structural integrity into a black hole system. And it's not falling by itself as a planet. It's falling with the solar system, the parts of the solar system that we are in that are also have configurations similar to this, that are connected to the parts of the galaxy that also have configurations that are connected to this. Once upon a time, for instance, Andromeda was not a separate galaxy. It was part of ours. That's why our SG9 and our universal level is Meroc Andromeda. It still has the gate, even though the connections are all messed up, and literally Andromeda is another galaxy at this point. So we're in the middle, or at the end, of a very big drama. This is the planetary configurations. When we talk about environmental influences that have caused the DNA mutation and the memory loss and things here, this is part of it. Next one, please. Oh, by the way, this is called the gravitron. It's the reversing and splitting of the Rouchet currents on the planet created a really nasty set of core staff vortices in the planet called the gravitron. That was activated over the last 2 years progressively, and it is activation of the gravitron and plugging it into the larger universal one that has already caused now the snapping of the staff of the universal Cathara grid. It has snapped from the Eka and tilted because of the gravitron part of the beast apparatus. So, now there's other things, and I just wanted to see these really quick. So if you see some of these configurations, you'll know what they're connected to. This thing here, we call it the poison apple. That's the shape of the basic shape of the magnetic flows on this planet now, all right, with its tilt. It is the poison apple. It's created by the distortions in the core that actually cause, and in the light body structure, that cause magnetic fields, a set of them to go this way, and a set of them to actually go this way. So you have one tilted this way, one tilted this way, off the center axis. The natural lotus flows that would allow for phasing of the lotus inside the planet and sparking, because every time the lotus phases, those lotus points are connected to light cells of the monad, and those light cells come together and spark and allow currents to come down the central vertical current. That can't happen on this planet. This planet has been rotating because of expending energy from its core seed atom for a long, long time now, because this configuration, which is known as the daisy of death of the lotus arcs, is part of the 666 Metatronic code, and like all of these things we've covered in different workshops, explaining them, each level as it came. It's also what causes the bulging of the poles of the physical Earth itself, that its spherical shape is literally mutated because its Cathara grid that should be out to here is pulled in to what is the tree of death here. So these are the Metatronic distortions in what should be the natural planetary body. So I just wanted to see those. That means a part of the indigo shield, just to come here, had to take on those mutations in order to get here, because as soon as you incarnate into this system, this is what the system will do to you. This is what your light body structure will do. It was a falling system. We knew that when the indigo shield came in, but we were hoping that over numerous time cycles we would be able to fix it and stop this final activation of the beast. That has not been successful, but we're still standing, and we're going into the cycle of the last stands, and that means we can at least get ourselves and anything that can ride crystal out before the point when the full net goes down and the system gets pulled into the Wieseldrat matrix, which is a black hole, imploding black hole system. Next one, please. And look out for people who are teaching the daisy of death. Just so you know, that whole paradigm, there's a whole paradigm, several of them actually, built upon those sciences that are teaching you to activate your Merkaba on the wrong speeds that will activate the daisy of death. There's all sorts of things out there in New Age teachings that are teaching you how to activate the beast within yourself in order to serve as another element of the beast to hold the activation in the planet. So just be aware of that if you're new people. This mess is also what is created by that whole set of interrelated energy dysfunctions. It creates these things that are like satellite dishes, these unnatural artificial vortices that actually do the wobble like this, and they're like big satellite dishes, and what they're keyed to is to pull in energy from the black hole systems instead of the natural staff energy that would arc over from the solar energy to have the living currents available. All of this stuff has been brought to it has been set into its full activation now. We've been trying to avoid this since Atlantis, since the Iani massacre of 22,326 BC. We tried to stop it then. And, well, as the name of the event connected to that date of the last failed stellar activation cycle indicates, the Iani races, which are the indigo races, didn't do too well. We got massacred. And we got massacred because they came in with spaceships, with beam ships, and literally fried millions of people. Just like they'd be running and they'd be coming in with the spaceships and just vaporizing them with the beams coming out. I don't think we're going to see that now. I hope not. That was not pleasant. At this point, we did try to stop this then. That didn't work. We all vowed to come back and try and give it one last chance because we knew it would be the last cycle. We would either stop it or not. And not seems to be the outcome that we have approached. Down here, I want to talk about this one just for a second, is this tube torus thing that forms through the core distortions of the natural energy flows. There are a couple of bands of it. There are two primary, but there's actually four, but there are two primary ones. They're known as the Van Allen radiation belts. All right. They're caused by the net. They are the net, that part of the net. The other part of the net is called the magnetosphere. It's not supposed to be shaped like that. It is a harness, an electromagnetic harness around this planet. We are a prison planet. And we have had our memories wiped genetically through electromagnetic distortion, so we don't even know that. And that's really sad. But at this point, whatever. Yeah, that's history. Here we are. We still have an ascension spiral to deal with, and that's good news. So I just wanted, especially new people, when we talk about some of this stuff that might sound a little bit scary, it doesn't have to be scary because we are working with the teams that know what you can, best case scenario, what you can do under conditions like this. So we're okay, and we're very protected in that. So you don't have to be scared. But I also want you to realize we do know what we're talking about. It's not that we're just talking off the cuff. There's some weird machine called the Beast out there with big eyes and 7 horns and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, horns are those, by the way. Think, right? Can you pull that down? Yeah, horns. Right? Yeah, the beast with the however many horns it's supposed to have. People think horns. No, it's a beast with horns like bugles. Right? They form these nasty artificial vortices that are literally vortices that suck in the black hole energies right into the core and then spew them out through the through the natural grid lines of the planet, and those energies create this poison apple configuration of the magnetic fields, the magnetosphere, and that creates this netting, or the Van Allen radiation belts. Now, in between these layers, there are the natural light body layers, and that's what we have to learn how to maneuver to get through, in order to get through holes in the net, in order to get to where the gate link for Eartha is. All right, next one, please. Oh, by the way, that was good. That was really quick. That configuration there, the yin-yang, unfortunately, is the configuration of the core energy flows associated with the tube torus and the continual recirculation of energy until it burns out of the beast. This system is meant to be able to latch on unnaturally to other systems and drain their energy through the vorticets. They're like sucker cups, where they just suck in energy, and it can actually suck in life force energy, take it through, and like a turbine, reverse it, and then turn it into Metatronic energy, and then cycle it back through the black hole systems. It's a mess. It's built on this spiral, which is called the Fibonacci spiral. Fibonacci. G being energy, yes, because it's also called the Fibonacci spiral. It's built on the Metatronic code. It is the Metatronic spiral. It is not the same as the crystal spiral. We've showed other things where we showed clearly the differences between the angles of this and the crystal spiral. And we showed how the crystal spiral is built from the proportions inherent to the Cathara grid. And this is not. This is the sucker spiral that taps in to first creation at a certain point and then feeds off it from there in order to make itself grow. The Fibonacci sequence is also connected to the Fibonacci spiral, and it is it's in many, many life forms on this planet at this point are fully running on the Fibonacci sequence as far as their expansion rates, the number of leaves a plant will put out, et cetera, because the mutation is so severe. And it's funny because certain people who teach these things as being good like to say, oh, well, it's a part of nature, so see, it's natural. Natural doesn't mean organic. Organic is the first creation mechanics, and the numbers and the angles of rotation of particle spin and the magnetic fields, etc., that all went with first creation, Christian mechanics. Because Christian mechanics are the mechanics that allow for phasing of the light body and perpetual regeneration of currents and perpetual circulation back and forth of energy between source in the demanifest state and source in the manifest state as the manifest light body of the cosmos. The Metatronic mess does not allow for that, and it is a black hole technology. Next one, please. Uh-oh, here we go. I'm starting to dance. That means I'll be talking fast soon. This is just a real rough drawing to show you something. All right, we've talked about the teleosphere. All right, there's a teleosphere. Earth has a teleosphere. This is Earth in relation to the host crystal shield of Eartha, which was the star of SG3, universal SG3. That would be here. All right, this would be the first layer, and many layers out would be from there, but this would be the first layer of the Eartha crystal body, in the body of Eartha, in Eartha core. Earth was hosted in to Eartha core in order to hopefully bioregenerate or regenerate and clear the mutations that had already been caused in the fall from Tara, which was another beastly drama. That was all about the beast machine up there too. Well, in 550 million years ago, when this solar system dropped down from density 2 into 1, it was seeded as a host system to try to help it heal so it could reascend back and reaccumulate its pieces to reform the entire body of Tara in density 2. Our whole solar system was one planet in density 2, planet / star called Tara, which is the remnants of, when we look up in the sky, the star called Alcyone. All right. So anyway, now we're not even connected to that spiral directly anymore. But this is Earth. This is Eartha. Earth's axis is still running straight. Its staff is still straight. Its light body is still functioning, which means it's one of the few main Stargate stars left in this Vecca system that is still capable of having its gates opened, having the Adore codes brought in, so it can open the gates between Ettore and Adore in order to in order to go into the Christ star crystal capsule state, so it can ride into the Edons. Anything that's going to get out of this system, the main life flow is going to come through Eartha. So it's going to be a very busy place in the next 40 or so years. Now, Earth is inside of this tilted. If the natural axis here is the natural axis of our universal Cathara grid would run here. And remember, we're on the SG3, then you had SG6, so we're on this pillar over here, and then you have the middle pillar. But this is in line with its natural axis, Eartha is. Here's Earth with its tilt inside there. This is why the Eartha gates don't line up with the Earth gates naturally anymore. In between here, there is this field of energy here. It is a buffer field between the two spaces. Part of it runs down into the Van Allen radiation belts. That is called the aurora field. It is through the aurora field that we will be able to link into the gate systems of Eartha in order to be able to get out to Eartha for the time of Starfire that ETA, again, 2047 to 2051 as the cycle is what they're saying. I mean, if it happen, I don't know if it can happen sooner, like if things go wrong. Yeah, if things go right, it might be nice. If things go wrong. But, I mean, worst case scenario, they would pull the Indigo Shield and whoever could ride with it if this was going to go really bad faster. Like if the planet was going to explode or something because they're like throwing too many nuclear bombs at each other or something over here. Like there would be an intervention on the intervention on the intervention. But for now, it looks like we are going to have some time to learn how to work these gates, which is good because it means that technically there would be 12 gates that run through the Aurora system that connect to the 12 natural stargates of Eartha that would ideally connect the 12 natural stargates of Earth to Eartha through the Aurora field. But the gates on Earth are so damaged, and they have been for so long, that they were using the interface gate system, the Ark of the Covenant gate system, connected through the Adore Polarian gate system in order to make the Aurora connection through so you could still get out to the gates of Eartha. There's only, out of the 12 potential Aurora gate links, there is only one that runs through Arc 7 at this point that is still viable. If they were able to open, the collective set of those 12 gates would be called the Spanners Gates. And it's because they span Ettore through Adore and back up through Ettore and into the Aurora field and into Eartha. Now, the only spanner gate that is viable to open at this point is Spanner 7, which runs through Arc 7. And there's something called the Alon Shield, the Shalon Shield, and the Kalon Shield that are connected with these in order to open a spanner gate. This also applies to our own anatomy. Personally, in our bodies, we have, just like we have a microcosm of the macrocosm light body structure, we also have parts of our own inner anatomy and light body anatomy that can run a spanner. And this is where the keys and getting the keys to not only the Ettore side but also the Adore side become important for our own selves. If we're going to get a physical body through, we need to be able to open the spanner gate within ourselves as well as within the planetary shields. This applies to people, even people who will transition instead, because some people will choose to just let their bodies go on their natural cycle and leave and do their ascension after they leave the physical body here. For some, they will take the physical body with them. It depends, because everybody's at a different stage, and some people are just tired of being in the body, and some people's seed atoms are tired, and we've got 40 more years to do this. We don't even know if we're going to take the bodies. We're going to be so old at that point, it'll be like wheelchair races through Spanner 7. You know, and I think like a normal person at age 83 or 100 and something would be fine, except it seems like because of all the activations and the wacky pace our life is at, trying to keep up with this material. Every time I take a transmission, it takes a little bit off the seed atom. As far as it brings energy in one way, but in another way it taxes the system. So I don't know if I'm going to make it to take the body through, but I'm determined that me and Az are going to train a team, and Mac too, are going to train a team that they can. All right? So even if we don't get to go, kind of like Moses or whoever it was, we don't get to go to the promised land, we'll get there another way. We'll just, we'll transition naturally. So there'll be Bardo training at some point for people who aren't going to, their physical bodies aren't going to hold out until it's time when the spanner's open. But there are going to be also opportunities as soon as we can get the spanner set open for Spanner 7 for first probably private visitation with some of the Aurora races as far as visiting you and then teaching you certain things, and then if your body can make it through, take you to visit. And that will be progressive over the next probably, 10 years, I would imagine. I don't know. They haven't given me dates on that. Something like that. What? You're laughing at me. Is that too many years? You're smiling at me in a funny way. You had that, was that you, or was that your Aquarius self coming through going, she thinks it's going to be 10? Right? I wonder, that was like, no, more like 1.5. You know what I mean? That was a funny look. Anyway, I hope so. Yeah, I'm trying not to say, by next year we'll all be running through the gate, because I don't want to get your hopes up if it's not something that's going to happen. We've always tried to tell you as truthfully as we could, where we're at in the game. We need to take it seriously and practice, okay? Okay. Yeah. I'm learning to listen to Speaker, too. I'm going for retirement very soon. I'm going to be painting pictures, and he's going to be doing the technicals. God bless him. Anyway, just so you have an idea of where our Earth and its tilted mess is. Inside, fortunately, a hosting star called Eartha that is not in that condition. Eartha can still starfire when the time comes. Next one, please. Yeah, that was just more of a close-up. Yeah, it's just showing you the tilted Earth and how it creates these how the tilt between the natural lines that should be running through Eartha that would also have corresponding lines running through Earth. It's all tilted, and it creates this really strange-looking diamond type. They're actually like triangle grid, and it's funny because somebody's onto this grid already, the racial grid, I think they call it. It's called Rachael grid, but there's somewhere, I think it was in Russia, wasn't it, that there was some scientist or something figured out that there was this weird electromagnetic grid that was all these triangle shapes that run all over the planet. Yeah. 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 So. Okay. Right. Right. And it's for the magnetic flows, right? The electromagnetic flows. Yeah. Earth right now has this mess of grids because you have some of the natural ones interfacing from Eartha crossing through the tilted ones from Earth, and it creates a totally unnatural grid. So they've actually been using Earth to siphon energy from the star Eartha as well, but Eartha it's a much larger quantum, and it's been able to hold its own integrity. I think there are some damaged areas actually, but it's not anywhere near. It's not beasted like this place was. It hasn't been assaulted by the beast mechanism in the same way. Yeah. All right. Just so you know, when I talk about threshold, it refers to a grid that's part of the beast apparatus, the black hole machine. It's built on this configuration of energy, the 3 ones, which are part of the Metatronic spiral. The beast basically activates in the core what is called the Tauran. All right, the Tauran seed atom is a particular, is the core of the seed atom. It's the light seed. Every manifestation starts with the birth of a Tauran. And so every planet has a planetary Tauran, and every person has a personal Tauran. Both, you have one for the outer domains, the middle domains, the inner domains, and the core domains. But this is in relation to the core of the planet Earth in the outer domains. The core Tauran light unit that is supposed to hold this configuration has been forced into, through the Beast machine, into this reversal where it's upside down, and it's fully encrypted now with the Daisy of Death Metatronic code. It can't what is called phase. Phasing is, we'll talk about in a little bit, is where these three sparks or light spheres pull in together and contract into this fourth one here that's called the particle. These three are referred to as particae, whether they're little tiny ones or really big ones on a planetary level. All right? This is a phase unit where these pull in and spark, and there's a whole bunch of things that happen in here that we'll look at in a minute, and this is where tachyon cycles take place and occur. Right? That would be the natural configuration where it would contract and expand and spark and generate keys. Well, the planet hasn't been able to generate its keys for a long time because it's been progressively it's been harnessed into the upside down, I call it the bug eyeballs, that has to do with buckyballs as well, configuration, which are Buckminster fullerenes, but I won't go into there. That's another part of the beast apparatus. But this is the light seed of the Earth is in that state now. That means it is running these configurations in the planetary from the center of the Tarn, these three, and they're like a net. And the net will run a progressive activation of the Fibonacci spiral, the threshold spiral. And eventually these three arms that started the activation will all pull together. It will compact the entire light seed into one unit, and then use that unit to drive the Metatronic spiral, which is a spiral that will literally harness the entire light body structure of Earth and pull it into the Wiesedracht black hole system. And it's because the threshold is keyed to the Wiesedracht system in encryption, as opposed to the other black hole, that it is going to go into that one, and the Wiesedracht instead of the other. So here's what we should be running. This is a natural crystal spiral here. There's a difference between the shapes and angles. That's the Metatronic spiral built on the Fibonacci spiral. All right, built on the Fibonacci sequence. This is a natural crystallic spiral built on the first Cathara grid, and there's a specific set of proportions of how the Cathara grids expand, and this has to do with what we'll see in a minute called the Starborn cycle, that creates the specific proportions of expansion of the Cathara grids, which creates the specific angles and shape of the crystal spiral. That is the natural ascension spiral. And it's funny because we have some people that are good with numbers that have been playing with trying to find out what are the numeric differences, and there's quite a few. I remember I'm not great with numbers, and I can't remember a lot of them when I have a bunch of other things to remember, but one of the most important things that was brought to our attention about the numerics is that this is always has a relation to its own center, which would be source or the first creation point. And that one has no relationship to its own center. And that's because it actually glues itself on to something else that's alive and sucks energy off it and expands out. There's a lot more on that. Noel Tobin has done a lot on that, and a few other people too. And we thank them for their contributions that someday maybe Yaz can explain that information. Right? Because yeah, I think it would be excellent if you guys could put together like a little mini workshop within the workshops that talk about that for the people who'd like to know. I'd love to sit in because I'm lost as far as the numbers go, But anyway, this is to give you an idea of when I talk about threshold, what threshold is. It's this particular grid configuration that started in the upside-down seed atom, or not seed atom, light seed of the planet within the planetary seed atom, and it is meant to pull these into one compacted unit and use that to fulfill the Metatronic spiral and the harness that will take the planet into black hole fall. Next one, please. These are also the things that we are fighting in our bodies. All right, when I talked about our seed atom being damaged, our seed atom was beginning to go into full, the core of it, the Taran, would have been phase locked into the same upside down Taran with the Daisy of Death encryption that the planet got if we hadn't began activation of the Taran in the indigo shield and in the solar shield at the time when the when the planetary seed atom was doing its Metatronic reversal. And that's why we started that in February, because that was the time when we had to head it off at the pass before we were dragged into the upside down reversal and the Metatronic code 2. This is just to give you an idea of black holes as far as what they artist rendition from magazines kind of thing, right? So there are, there's dynamics of black holes that that science theorizes about, and I think they're aware of some, but they do say that Sagittarius A star or whatever appears to be almost the center of the black hole in the center of our galaxy. Anyway, next one. More positive, fun stuff, please. Yeah, I only go back through the beast when there's quite a few new people with us, because they might not have heard any of that information, and it's very grounding. When you hear me talk about things, I talk about them kind of loosely, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you might think I'm just like wacky, but there's a very specific apparatus that the beast represents, and it is a very specific black hole technology that's here. Now, we'll get into something more fun. I'm just going to go through this really quick. You've heard me mention before the Starborn Cycle. Those of you who've been with us know what it is. Those of you who are just coming might not. The Starborn Cycle is the process by which, from the first Partakai, is a process by which the first creation was set in perpetual motion, and it is the process by which all creation continually rebirths itself in a living light system. Now, the Starborn Cycle, in simple terms, starts with the first Partakai, and there's a whole set of teachings that go about before the birth of the first Partakai, where thought gels, where the attention of source within itself gels and creates a Gelesic radiation pattern. And from that thought gel, or idea, the gels begin to go through several stages and become what is the imprint for the first Partakai. And then that does certain other things, and it becomes born as the first Partakai. So there's a whole bunch of the teachings that we've covered a bit of before, where thought gels to become the first Partakai, or consciousness unit, living light consciousness unit, that is the first step toward manifestation in an eternal life universe. The first step of manifestation was birth of the first Partakai. Now, Partakai units have inside of themselves, this is where we get the Christ code with the Cathara grid. Think of a Cathara grid and the 12 points on a Cathara grid. In the creation point of thought imbuing a part of the energy that is the consciousness field of Source, where Source actually focused a point of its attention within itself, as if you were focusing on a thought in your mind, right? And from that focus, the imprint of the consciousness of Source itself imprinted the consciousness part of itself it was focusing in, and it created 12 points of focus. Those 12 points of focus, or 12 little gel points of radiation or attention, became through several processes that are quite complex, and we did that in a different workshop, and I still haven't typeset the writings on that. But anyway, the encryption forms, the core encryption, the core radiation program was imbued in the first thought, the thought of creating within itself from Source, and those little points of gel became what are called Urs. All right, Urs they have a specific quantum of energy, and I believe I think they're 30. I think they have a quantum of, say, 30 quantum, and you take a set of those and a set of 12 of those, and I believe that becomes the 360, right? So the first creation in the birth of the first Partakai built on the first, what is called the eternal encryption, which is the 12 points of the Cathara grid, that are held in Gelesic form, and around which the sphere of the first Partakai forms, and then births into outpicturing. And it's all just the field of the consciousness of God Source. It's not like it went elsewhere outside of God Source, because there is no boundary to the consciousness field of God Source. So this is a dynamic of creation happening within the consciousness of God by the consciousness of God. So when the first Partakai is born, it carries the first encryption, or set of 12 Gelesic units. The second Partakai is what sets everything in motion. source created a second Partakai unit, but a second focus of attention at the same place that it created the first one. That caused a reaction with the first one that moved it forward a bit and left a space, and that space was then filled to form the second one. And in moving that forward, the first Partakai ended up with the encryption that was just like Source's. It was the image of the same thing that Source's consciousness held, flipped it upside down as it rolled out into the manifestation arena. And at that point, it became what is called I think the original and the eternal, the original encryption, which the original one is the upside down version of the eternal encryption. Now, the eternal encryption, I think I've got this right. I know I have the other part of this right, but I keep getting original and eternal mixed up. But first Partakai started out with the image of encryption, just like Source, right? In its process of birthing, that reversed to the reflection of. So Partakai 1 carries the reflection of encryption. Partakai 2, again, started with the encryption of, and it didn't do its reversal flip into birthing. It came through the same creation point and split Partakai 1, and through that process it retained its original, it retained the image of encryption of Source, and Partakai 1 has the reflection of image. This is where you get the difference between atomic and etheric matter. All right, etheric matter is born out of the phasing of the second Partakai unit, where it splits, comes back together, and sparks, and the atomic matter or atomic currents, atomic sparks, come from the splitting and phasing of the first Partakai. The whole creation or starborn process is set in motion by the process of that first Partakai that was created at the eternal creation point, coming through, then the second Partakai coming through, splitting the first and creating what is called a Partakai phase set of a Partakai, a Partakai, and a Partakam. From that point, the sparking occurs, and first, Partakai 2 was born into Partakai 1, split Partakai 1. Partakai 1 splits, it comes back together, sparks. Remember, Partakai 2 is now where Partakai 1 used to be, and it's connected to the split one. So you have Partakai 1 as the third whole, and then Partakai 2 as the third whole, and Partakai 1 being split but still connected to that third whole. The connection to the third whole, which is Partakai 2, allows Partakai 1 to phase back together. When it phases, its two quantums spark. They make a spark that is equal to the quantum of the two parts put together. That creates a backflow spark. So the Partakai 1 and the backflow spark travel up, go back through the center creation point of Partakai 2, and then a backflow return spark is released downward from Source. That downward backflow return spark causes, and the return of Partakai 1 causes Partakai 2 to split. And then that goes through its phase cycle, and it creates an etheric spark of equal quantum. And that creates a backflow etheric spark, and that etheric spark goes through and comes out with a backflow return etheric spark. And that's the first two sparks of creation, or the first two additional Partakai sparks are created. And then again, they keep phasing. This thing is called the triad. When you have a Partakai and it's two Partakai, one splits to become Partakai and a Partakam, and they keep this phase cycle going, where they phase down, they phase up. They create sparks which create quarks, up quarks, down quarks, those kind of things that are the core bits of our subatomic particles here. So the whole starborn cycle is set in motion by the first two Partakai and them entering an eternal phasing cycle. That phasing cycle creates the first three sparks, which the first one is Partakai 1 split. So first spark is created is an atomic spark, because it's a little bit tricky. If the encryption of Partakai 1 is the reflection of, which is called photonegative, compared to Source, right? The photonegative of Source. So if Partakai 1 splits, it sparks, makes a photonegative backflow spark. That goes back into Source. And then another one turns around. There's the flip factor. So it creates a photopositive spark, backflow return spark. So that when we get into the dynamics of this later with polarity and things, that it starts here with the first Partakai. And the the atomic matter thus has, from part chi 1, has backflow return sparks that are photonegative, and backflow sparks that are photonegative, backflow return sparks that are photopositive, and the opposite is true for those who come out of part chi 2 that create etheric matter. So that is the first place where the first sparks start. The triad, which is that unit of 3, one split, it's actually a unit of 2, but one is split and one is whole, that would be at the center here. It would not have an axis grid, but actually it would be considered the 0 axis where creation starts. And the phasing of that creates a set of 3 sparks. And then when the fourth spark, I won't go through the whole process of how we end up with the shape of the Taran. That was covered in other workshops. But it is the first 3 and then 1 spark that creates the Taran light seed. And it is from that light seed that all of these stages of expansion, each one of them with a specific name, with a specific angle of where its top is. If this is the 0 point, this would be the top of the triad, or the first part chi set. Then they shift 45 degrees with every expansion. Now, there's the specific ratios of shift and expansion of the Cathara grid actually give you the size, the proportionate size of each of those layers, so in relation to each other. So here you would have, this is called the triad axis, which is the 0 axis. All right, the triad phases until it makes its 4 sparks, and then they go through this pulse thing where they pull into source and come back out as what is called the Taran. The center spark of the Taran has 3 parta chi sparks and 1 what is called a parta chi. The parta chi spark is a photogenerator. The photogenerator spark has it has layers of gelesic states within that central parta chi. And it is from here that keys form, and it is from the keys that matter eventually forms through a set of stages. But before we get to that, first let's look at just the aspects of the star-burn cycle really quickly. We have the triad, the axis 0, 0 point creation. First set of sparks come and they rebirth out on this axis where their top is up. That is where you would get the Taran. It's hard to see here, but there's that is the configuration of the Taran light seed, where you have the 1, 2, 3, and then the center 1 parta chi, right? The next expansion after this, now each one of these, that did a phase cycle, which means it did a spark cycle, right? A cycle of sparking in order to create the sparks that became the Taran. But when the sparks, when a certain number of sparks are generated from any one of these, right, they hit a point, the flash point, where the whole thing pulls back into creation point, opens the creation point door, replicates its quantum, and then comes back out again, and it rebirths, and it births a multiple of itself. So the triad created the Taran. The Taran, once it's created, goes through its phase cycle where it pulses like this, and the gelesic states inside create sparks as the parta chi are moving through the gelesic states that are inside the parta chi. The parta chi does some really interesting things that we'll see in a minute that creates what is called a key generation cycle, which is part of what is called a tachyon cycle. All right. Now, a tachyon cycle, the tachyon cycles is a process by which quantum sparks are generated and then brought back into source and replicated for the next, and then rebirthed and burst out for the next level of expansion. So it is through the process of parta chi phasing and through the process of light cluster or light seed phasing that progressively creation, the light body, builds. This is the structure that every light body starts out as, and it's the structure that every matter body starts out as well. So we've got the axis 0 is the triad. Axis 1, first expansion, is the Taran. Axis 2, second expansion, is the dyad, which is like 2 Tarans, so it has 2 parta chi in it. There are different numbers associated with these numbers. Say for this one, the 3, the 3, the 3, and the 3. The 3 is the divine constant in the center where it's always the same. It refers to the Taran. So here you have the divine constant. Here you have the 3. divine constant, and 3. 3 particuli, divine constant, and 3 particuli. Okay? That gives you the dyad. There are 6 particuli in a dyad. Then you have axis 3. It's called the myad, the 636. That's called the starseed unit. That is a natural starseed unit. It's 6 particuli positive, 6 particuli negative, which is 12 particuli, plus the divine constant in the center. This becomes, when it's mutated under the Metatronic code, becomes the 666, where that 3 is shattered and forced into an artificial 6. And it changes the expansion rates into a completely different configuration that builds through the Metatronic spiral, through the Fibonacci spiral. So here, anyway, we've got a natural one. We have the axis 3, the myad, then axis 4, the monad. That's what we talked about when we were talking about the Shadi. That was the axis 4 monadic level. All right, so that implied when we saw that monadic level, that going more into the core of yourself, there were these other levels going into your core, and that there are these levels extending out this way, both from the Shadi, middle seed atom, and the Azure seed atom, which is your outer seed atom. So you have light body structure all over the place, balls upon balls upon balls. We have the bones and the balls. The bones are the Cathar grids and the radiation encryptions and the lines between them. And the balls are like the cells of creation. They are the light cells of creation. So anyway, we have the myad with 12 particuli. We have the monad. This has 24 particuli. There's a specific thing. Notice we went from 3 times 2 is 6, times 2 is 12, times 2 is 24, times 2 is 48, right? There's a times 2 replication factor going here with the light cell quantum, and that's called the 24-324, and that is the Amareya axis 5, the Amareya hub cell that we have over here, the axis 6, Adon. This is what is rebirthing, because we already have one or we wouldn't be here. So it's rebirthing to reset itself on this axis. We've gone through these. This was February of 2006 in Tenerife when we began activation of the Tarn. We've gone through the first set of the Starborn cycle up to here. This is going to be happening sometime tomorrow, where we get the rebirth of the Adon, which is called the Divine Blueprint cell, because it's the 144. It has 144 particuli. Now, notice it jumped from a times 2. They were going times 2 replication here, between 5 to 6. It's a times 3 replication. So you have the 48 particuli times 3 equals 144. So you have 144 particuli in here. Now, and that's on axis 6. So you have, remember, 0. It's easier to see the axes here. Axis 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? There's one more axis here. That's axis 7. And then we're back to 0 again. This is a time cycle as well as a growth expansion cycle. All right, and literally the yugas and the iwagos and all of the other things we've talked about in cosmic clock workshops that are about how the time cycles work in the universe and on a planet, they're all connected to this expansion cycle, this cycle of expansion. So we're here. This is the 144 Divine Blueprint unit. That has all of these cells. That's the 144 cells. These are just really rough pictures of them, but we have some really beautiful ones that Az did on CAD to show what these look like, where you can see all the balls. In fact, that one's on the T-shirt, I believe. No, it's this one. It's on the T-shirt. It's the Edon. Then the next one, Axis 7. And these are just the days of creation, okay? That doesn't mean like one day and then tomorrow and the next day here. That's not Earth time. We're talking about cycles, some of them very, very long. So anyway, axis 7, Edon. This one is a times 12. You have the 144, and this one, as it's building quantum, the quantum sparks that they're building are actually affecting each other and making more and more replication potential. So it goes from times 3 replication to times 12 replication between axis 6 and axis 7, with birth of the Edon on axis 7. That is a 1,728 particuli, 1,728 keys, right, that we're working on generating in our bodies, part of which, actually, we're doing about double that now, I think, with the Adore keys. Then, when it goes back to what's called the 0-point axis, it goes from 7 to 8, right? 8 is 0, the 0 point where it started, where the little triad was. Right. This is another times 12, 1728 times 12, 20,736 particuli units. Now, I won't even try to count because I haven't done the charts yet on them, but it's not only the Partakai units that are replicating, it's the Partaki units in the center that are also replicating. So the photogenerator cells are replicating. These do some fantastic things that we'll just get an idea about as far as seeing how tachyon cycles work, because they build on each other, and it's really wild. For it to understand starborn cycle, it's simply a unit is born. All right, let's say, I'll start with this one. A unit is born by the process of sparking, right? Okay. Now, once that unit is born on its axis, it goes through a spark pulse cycle that is called a tachyon cycle. Each one of these has a tachyon cycle, all right? Each one of these parts of the starborn process, one of these levels of expansion. So from axis 1 to, this is called the SIDA cycle, from axis 0 to axis 1. From axis 1 to axis 2, that would be tachyon cycle 1. So you have tachyon cycle 1, tachyon cycle 2, tachyon cycle 3, tachyon cycle 4, tachyon cycle 5, tachyon cycle 6. And then the 7th tachyon cycle, I believe that's how it goes. Yeah, T1, T2. So I'm going to do some more of these charts that show it on this, bring the axes out so you can see it more on the time clock. But anyway, each of these are a tachyon cycle. So when we talk about tachyon cycles, we're talking about harmonic key generation cycles. Each of those tachyon cycles starts with one tachyon cycle equals 12 harmonic key generation cycles. So in one axis shift, from say axis 1 to axis 2, there are 12 harmonic key cycles, at the end of which is a tachyon cycle where everything goes superluminal and then pulls into source, and everything, the whole unit itself, not just the Partaki, but the entire cluster that Partaki is part of, pulls right into source, disappears, replicates its quantum. It rebirths back out at its axis, and it sends out on the next axis a times whatever replica. You know, times 2 going through those, and then we get into times 3 and times 12 times 12. Okay, so if we can understand the tachyon cycles, harmonic key cycles are subcycles of tachyon cycles. One tachyon cycle goes with each axis shift and with each level of expansion in the starborn cycle. That will give you a good roundup as far as, okay, now why are keys important? All right, by the end, by the way, we get to axis 8. I won't heavily go into this now. We've covered this in a couple of the other ones, but this is the Cathara grid that's running through. Notice each one of these starts with a Cathara grid, and there's a specific rate that expands to. So the Cathara grid sizes that go with each axis give you the size of the diameter, actually, of the outside sphere that pertains to that axis and that set of keys and that set of light cells. So when we get here, this is what happens when you hit axis 08 again. There's a whole set of things that happen that I'll have a little bit more on tomorrow, as far as the activation of what is called the Rashala inner flame, and then later the Rashala outer flame. This means once you get this expansion, and you get to axis 8, then there is this inflow cycle where the energy that has been spiraling outward in the crystal spiral configuration. See, it's the shape of these Cathara grids that actually give you that crystal spiral configuration. So there's a stream of expansion that comes out, and it forms that crystal spiral around those light levels of light ball expansion. And at this point, there's the keys accumulate and bring from the core, bring what we'll see in a minute are called the fire crystals that are formed from each one of those expansions in the process of replication of the Partaki that go with each one of those cells. So we'll talk about more of that, tomorrow. But when we get to axis 8, there's a down cycle that spirals down and back to core, and then there's a really rapid another 6 cycle. This is called a 6 cycle because it has 6 tachyon cycles, and then it has the going back through the SIDA cycle down to core, and then spiraling out again on a counterclockwise. This is where the Adore keys are picked up on the other side. So when you finish one set of 6 tachyon cycles, or a 6 cycle, you hit something called the Edashai, which is the end of the 6th cycle point, is the birth of the Edon. And that's when you go into the Edashai cycle that will take you up to the 0-point axis and then down, well, actually up to the 0-point axis, then down in to core again, pick up the keys that go with the Adore side, then that spirals back out again. So you pick up the Adore keys that allow you to open the light structure on this side to the light structure on that side. That allows activation of the Rosh Hashanah flame, which actually activates over on this axis, on the 0-8 axis, and then goes through a process of shifting from 8 to what will be the start of the next axis, the next round, actually, the next expansion round. So it goes into flame on 8-0, then goes to what was axis 1 in the cycle before. All right, this point, we are right here now in the first set of tachyon cycles. We will rebirth the Adon tomorrow sometime. And in rebirth of the Adon, we'll enter tachyon cycle 6. Unfortunately, it is here also that the configurations of the 6